Eccomi, allora vediamo, mi organizzo. Ecco qua, dovreste vedere le slides ora, no? Il titolo è UK Universities, What Do You Want to Know? So I'm going to talk about UK universities. I'm going to think about application and way of studying in the UK. And I'm going to also talk about Oxford. Oxford is a quite unique institution, as Cambridge, for a certain extent Durham, because it's even different than other British universities. So I think I'm going to try to have a sort of a window on the experience of Oxford. So first, I want to make a point why British universities, and my point is not that everyone should be studying in a British universities. I think there are many points and options why someone should be actually apply to only Italian universities. There are many other fantastic European universities. So I want to try to discuss why British universities. And I will highlight some points that are different from Italian universities. And then I would talk about what to select and why. So what degrees are there, how to get there in Oxford. I think I'm well placed to discuss differences between Italian universities and British university because I did my BA in Italy. So I did my main degree at the University of Genova, actually. And then I moved to the UK and I've been studying in France, in the Netherlands. I've been teaching in the Netherlands and been visiting the Scandinavian system, and I've been teaching a lot in the UK system. So just briefly on myself, I'm professor of politics and international relations. So in Italy is called also, well, political science, but I teach politics in a strange way in the sense I use a lot of statistics. It is quite uncommon in Italy, and also the kind of commentator you see in Italian television, usually they don't really have a solid grasp of statistics. And I guess this is interesting, but also dramatic for our loved country. I'm a fellow at Brasenose College, and you can see in that picture my college. Brasenose is one of the 38 colleges, and you can see the knocker on the top right hand of the slides. That is the knocker that gives the name to my college. So as I told you, I did my BA in Genova, but then I did a master and a PhD at the University of Essex in the UK. After that, I was assistant professor for 4 years in the Netherlands. That is a fantastic country with also a terrific quality of teaching. And then I went back to Oxford. In the past 2 years, I've been visiting professor at Bocconi in Milan. So, you know, most if you have questions about Bocconi, that is an interesting case because it's a private university in Italy. And actually, I think Bocconi as having, well, I think the most recent ranking in terms of economics put Bocconi at 18th position as a research institution economics, and Bocconi is a very internationalized environment. That it seems also a possible natural, how do you say, university for students of a school like this. My research, I will not talk about my research at all, but in just for sharing a couple of things, I work on civil wars and peace operations. I try to understand why there are civil wars, why they are so long, and what kind of peace operation can help to stop civil wars. So this was just briefly about me and my experience. But so let's start with why British universities, okay? So of course I have some very simple pros and cons. Some are provocative, some are less provocative, but I think they deserve food for thought for our discussion later. Okay, first of all is English. You know, clearly it's something that the training is in English. You will solidify, you will strengthen your skills you already got from this. I've been teaching also in some Italian universities, and most of the faculty, it depends also on which topic, I have to say, but most of the faculty in Italian universities still struggle with English. Is a matter of topic. So I say that, for instance, hard science, natural science, Italian professor speaks better English than, for instance, humanities or social science, and there is a generational factor. But as a matter of fact, you know that on average, the faculty, the professor of Italian universities are much older than abroad. I think the difference is like 54, the average as assistant professor, associate professor in Italy, sorry, yes, in Italy, and in UK is like 35. So there are 20 years of difference at the same position as a teacher. It's an international environment. What does it mean? And this is, of course, information pre-Brexit, in the sense that until Brexit, that is something that we're still not in Brexit, but we are moving forward Brexit. Most of the British university had a very international environment. That means professors from different countries, but also students. And I put it as a pros because this is a very unique experience that the student should have, to speak with different people, with different training, with different accents, with different cultures. A third point that becomes more technical is very focused on degrees. What do I mean very focused on degrees? It means that, as you know, there is one strategy in the US that is called the liberal arts approach, where actually the students can navigate through different topics. Whereas the British system, when, for instance, a degree in politics or a degree in biology, those 3 years are really about exams that are about that. So since the beginning, just after the high school, the topic, the issue you're going to study are very focused on your decision. When I say as a fourth point, high standards, I mean that it really put in front of everything, I think, in most of the British universities, the quality of the research outcome of the faculty. So it's important professors are also research active, but also the high standards in terms of teaching. It's interesting that teaching is systematically evaluated and is a matter of career progression in British universities. Another point is that once you are within the British system, if you enter a BA, in case you want to do a master or eventually the field, let's say a master and field or master of sciences, is easier basically to enter from a BA in Great Britain to a master in Great Britain. I would say that in case also you think to do something in the US, the bridge is easier from Great Britain to the US American system. And when I say easier, I'm not looking at the point of view just of the applicants, the students, but I think also of the professors, they make decision to admit students. So clearly, if I see, and I've been doing a lot of admission, if I see a degree from a British university, is easier to compare with all applicants, and I know what are our standards to admit a student at Oxford, for instance. Okay, what are the possible negative aspects? So one is high fees. Of course, it costs higher. For some of you, maybe you're lucky enough that this is not an issue, but for some of you, this could be an issue, and you want to think, you know. And when I say high fees, is also high cost in terms of living. So if you want to do a bachelor at the University College of London or Imperial, that are top university in London, you know, one big cost is also living in London. And I have to say that it's unclear at the moment what's going to happen for European citizens in terms of fees, because so far the British universities applied same fees to British students and European students. Just to do a comparison, non-British students and non-European students, they pay at least, I think, in my university, 3 times the fees. So if European students will become like overseas students, it will multiply by 3 at least the cost of the fees. By the way, I don't know that, if you ask me a question, I don't know exactly what are the fees. There is a huge variation depending on degree, but websites are very well organized and transparent about cost. Okay, this is maybe because I'm just getting old and I've been living abroad for a lot, and I came a lot to Italy. And in comparative terms, I think there are lower living standards. With all respect due to my British friends and fellows, clearly there are some aspects in terms of food or also social relations that are very different from Italy. I do believe that for a student at BA level, so someone who is very excited and someone who maybe doesn't care a lot about the quality of spaghetti that he or she's eating, is not a big problem, but is also another thing to consider. Then the opposite, if you see, I said they are very focused degrees. One of the questions is whether there are too focused degrees, in the sense that if you think about the degrees that you do in Italy, of course, you can explore and pick different exams, whereas much of the degrees in Great Britain, first you have less exams, but very, very in-depth. But this exam, many of them are compulsory, and there is not much way to, mix and match, change, and explore. I think I teach in one quite unique degree that is called PPE, Politics, Philosophy, and Economics, that I think is one of the most, with a large scope in terms of topics, but many other degrees are very focused. And then, of course, it rains, and it does rain. And the norther you go, the more it rains. Actually going north could be interesting because there are top universities like Edinburgh, but also Glasgow, Scotland. And I think I have a soft spot for Scottish accent, the Scottish people. And the universities are great, but it rains a lot there. Okay, let me see something that I had experienced as a student, and now, I know also as a teacher. The way of living the studying is very different. The way that British students and Italian students have to follow the lecture and do their preparation is very different. So, except few cases in Italy, students, they have very large lecture rooms, and they have to prepare their readings. So usually is a couple of books, maybe one handbook and a couple of books just before the exam. One of the things I love the most about the British system is that we really try to give syllabi where for every single lecture there are required readings of 1 chapter, 2 chapter, a couple of articles. The students read before the class. So if you think, there is a very different way in the way you organize your preparation, but also the way you experience the lecture. So of course, not everyone does the preparation for the lecture, but in my medium-long experience with my students, most of the students, eventually, they really appreciate better a lecture if they've done the reading beforehand. A second point that I think I wanted to stress is that you do a lot of writing in British University. You learn how to write essays, and but also you learn how to read faster. The first element is that because most of the exams, and I have to say, I think almost all degrees from literature to management to biology, most of the final exams are written, and you do need assignment by essays. So the idea of having an oral exam is something unique or almost absent in the British system. So what is the positive thing? The positive thing is that, you know, you learn how to write a crispy, clear essay, and you learn how to write it quickly. Whereas in the Italian system, I think those that have done experience in the Italian system, some of them, the only experience they have to write something is writing their thesis. And, you know, writing is not an easy process. And then also more reading in the sense that you have to move from one article to a chapter to a book. And this relates to another aspect, that BA students in Great Britain, they have to learn how to use library. They have to go to the library. They have to know how to use online material and downloading articles more than Italian students, where most of them, they use the library as a place where to study, rather as a place where to find material to study. Another point that I say why is positive Great Britain, but what is different from Italy, is that there is a quicker and more international update of courses and topics. So, and this is related to many aspects that we can discuss. I think first because the research output is very important in the British system, because on average the lecturers are younger, and all the syllabus, so the material for the courses, tend to be quite updated. Maybe, you know, some of your parents have been very lucky, but I remember some of my experience of the Italian system was, you know, professor using some handbooks that were out of print or were just written decades before. So the last point is that you will have high probability to have a research active professor. So when you will speak with one of your professors or you will follow a lecture, this person is not only a teacher, that is a very important aspect, but is a research active teacher. So it's someone who specializes on a topic, is someone who writes an article, goes to conferences, and she or he is very eager also sometimes in the lecture to share these ideas. And I think this is very, you know, one of the most attractive aspects I found when I was interacting as a student with British professors. So other places in the European Union, yes, on top of my list, the Netherlands. Not just because well, besides the debates we're having now with the Netherlands and the budget European issues, the Netherlands is a fantastic country. It's fantastic for many aspects. One is also that you can live there without learning Dutch. And you can easily live in the Netherlands speaking English, and most of the degrees are taught in English. I taught at the University of Amsterdam. University of Amsterdam has two big universities, University of Amsterdam and the Free University of Amsterdam, but also there is the University of Leiden that is fantastic. So there are excellent universities. If you look at all the global ranking, they are overachiever. If I'm not wrong, I think the Netherlands is 1/3 of population of Italy, but in the top 100 universities in the world, there are at least Amsterdam, Leiden, sometimes Groningen. They are doing very well. Of course, and then if you can ask me, there are also other universities that are fantastic in Scandinavia, fantastic, like University of Oslo or Uppsala in Sweden. Of course, if you have a problem with rain there, you will have a big problem with darkness and snow, but universities are free, and the quality of the teaching is fantastic. I don't speak about German and French experience because I've not been a lot in content, but also because I think they have some issues that can be lumped with Italian issues. So they're less internationalized than other academia. I spent a year in Paris, and then eventually I decided to move to the UK because most of what they were studying there was more French oriented. So deciding where to apply, I think the topic matters. So what does it mean? It means that, and I think most of you already have been thinking about looking around, is that some top university don't excel in everything, okay? So what does it mean? It means that if you want to do, for instance, and I'm talking about politics because I know politics, perhaps University of Essex, you never heard about it, but it's one of the best universities. Or I would say, for instance, a degree of politics at University of Essex is better than a degree of politics at Cambridge. Or someone would argue maybe a degree in medicine is better at the University of Cambridge rather than Oxford, okay? However, institutions are really important because they give you the infrastructure, the support, and another aspect is professor mentors. So one of my suggestions is check their web profiles. Check what they're studying, where they study. Check, usually, actually, I do for myself, they put their teaching material. So you can find, for instance, their syllabi. So basically, if you were admitted and we are taking the lecture and classes with a certain professor, what sort of classes they would be doing. So, and then eventually, if you want to write a thesis with them, it's important that you find someone who you think is interesting. And of course, location matters. It matters for a couple of, it matters financially, but also it matters, I think, in what is your nature and personality. I think, I like to make broad generalization, but I think, if you want to have a city experience, the big city is London, clearly, but also maybe you want to have a campus experience. So living in a university where is basically almost autonomous, where you have restaurants, bar, library, movie theater in the campus, like University of Warwick or Essex. Or you want to live in a city that is not like London, but is intellectually and artistically very interesting, like Glasgow. That's another aspect. So a big thing that here is stressed, never doing just one application. So, you have to try to apply to many institutions, because once you write one application, it's easily to apply to others. You cannot control the decision making, so is out of your hands whether you get to London School of Economics or University of Warwick, but you can aim to maximize your menu. So, my suggestion is usually at least 3, if not 5 application, and that's very important. Okay, I'm gonna just and then I can get some question later, but I'm gonna look at different way to look at the type of university and quality of university. Here I just picked the Guardian University Guide, but there are others. I find it very interesting because also comparing to the Italian system, I think some newspaper try to do that, but they're not that well developed and specific as in Great Britain. So the Guardian University, you can pick on a subject area. So you see, this is, generally speaking, Cambridge, St. Andrews, Oxford on all different subjects. And you see there are different indicators. What is interesting, you can check which indicators you care the most about, satisfied with the course, with the teaching, with the feedback, and rank. But of course, as I said, sometimes, it can be a bit misleading if you look at just the main table. You want to check, what is the subject. Here I pick politics. Of course, I completely disagree with this ranking because put Oxford third, and we all know that Oxford is first on politics, but this is interesting. And St. Andrews is first, Cambridge is third, and you can see on which direction. Of course, it was a bit of a joke saying that Oxford is third, but in the sense that what I suggest also when you're preparing application, just don't rely only on one source. So don't rely only on the Guardian University Guide, because there are others. So this is, for instance, business management as a topic, or engineer civil, but also you can use topuniversity.com. This is, I guess you know it, but I actually have been, this is done by a survey also, to professors. So I've been interviewed, for instance, they also ask professor who they think are the other best universities. And here is also not just looking at Great Britain, but rest of the world. And you can see they have also top in different topics: engineering, technology, arts, humanities. And this is again to compare, and you can also, if you want, look at only in the UK or only in the Netherlands. And this is another source that I suggest you to look at, is the Times Higher Education. And this is also, so just to make the point, I gave you 3 resources at least to compare, and you can compare by topics and see, you know, where is the convergence on the quality. But what is interesting, you can see also the different indicators. You can see number of students per basically teaching units, or also number of students per staff, and decides what is of this ranking the most important for you. I want to make a point. I don't know how many of you are aware, but in the UK, departments, universities get money from the central government as a function of their research outcome. In Italy, this is happening partially, I think, in a very tiny way, whereas the Research Excellence Framework, or REF, has become a very important aspect in all life cycle of universities. So they are evaluated systematically every 6-7 years. We're supposed to submit now our REF, but with COVID, it will happen next year. Government allocates resources on basis of university topics versus performance, and you can read report and ranking, okay? What is interesting is that if you Google Research Excellence Framework, you will find, for instance, the last one that was done, I think, was published in 2014, if I'm not wrong. And what is interesting is that you can read report for every single university in every single topic. Of course, and this has to be stressed, the 3 sources I showed you before are basically more students oriented, so also about the quality of teaching and other indicators. This is for research outcome. So the REF, it tells you something, what are the best departments on a certain subject, biology, engineering, or politics, based on articles and books that these departments have published. Okay, so I guess most of the people have been, you know, are aware that when you want to prepare your application, usually your degree is not enough. So it's enough to have a degree at least to then enter in a British university. Usually you have to check the entrance requirements, because often you have to do some extra exam or test, okay? In my case, when I do the admission for PPE, Politics, Philosophy, and Economics, we use and look at the TSA, the Thinking Skill Assessment. This is something that you can do, you do with some organization, but this is a very important assessment, because at the University of Oxford, but no other university, we do our ranking admission based on the performance of the thinking skill assessment. There are different components. There is the critical thinking, there is the writing essays, and of course TSA is for certain subject, other subjects have other tests. But what I'm saying is that if you really care to enter a British university, the sooner you understand what are the requirements in the tests you have, the sooner you start studying for those tests, and usually those tests have to be studied in a specific way, the better it is, okay? Often, as an Italian based in Oxford, I receive email from parents, Italian parents, say, you know, my son, my daughter is applying to Oxford, do you have any tips? And usually they are already quite late for preparing TSA, okay? So TSA is crucial. I'm going to show you then later from my experience why it's crucial, and for the ranking. But writing your application, so the cover letter is very important, and the students has to write it. Of course, professor and family give some support, but usually has to be several drafts. Why you and not another candidate? What will be your contribution to the college or department? Why that degree? These are questions that we really want to address in the cover letter. And you know, this is something that I'm sure these as some form of training and feedback. But I would be happy also to, you know, I think sometimes it's important to just do a session on say, okay, what is a weak point or strong point of the cover letter? And of course, also references. Okay, so references, we read references carefully, and this is a job of your teachers, so it's not a job of the students. I think you're very lucky because as IB school, your professors know how to write references. I have to say that after several years of admission overseas, when I say overseas, I mean continental Europe, professors are not that good at writing references. And so usually, sorry, but I also make typos. I see techers, no, teachers need to be specific about students and relative performance. So usually it's very important to say, you know, how a student compared to the distribution of the grades in a school is in the top percentiles, and also very important, the relative contents performance of the school. So this is something that I'm sure Professor Damiano and all the professor they discuss, but this is, you know, usually we read carefully these references. So, and I'm about to conclude. From my perspective, you know, and it's quite unique because we have a lot of colleges and life is strange because it's in the department of the college. I select with a couple of other colleagues, 8-9 students per year, only 8-9 students in my topic per year. We receive around 130 applications for PP only in my college business. We rank them through TSA and predicted grades. And then usually we interview between 22 and 24. So basically, you know, we got this application, we have a huge Excel file where we look at all the different criteria on TSA, this unpacked in critical thinking or other skills. And also we look at their predicted grades, then we do a ranking. And then we do, okay, which one of these 130 we have to interview? Because Oxford, and this is also very different from other university, we do interview to students. And in my college is a double interview. So if you want to study PP, politics, philosophy, economics in my college, you have to do your application. Then you will be, if you're shortlisted, you will come to Oxford, you will stay a few nights in college, and you will have a double interview. Each panel will have a philosopher, a political science and economist. I know it sounds like a joke, but each interview will last between 15 and 18 minutes. And after that, we do a ranking of these 24 and we give offer only to the first 8, okay? This is not a typical admission typology that has happened for instance, University of Birmingham or University of Essex. But if you want to then ask me question, we can also discuss a bit more about college and college life. So, and this is exactly the point is that is the tutorial system means that I have only 8 students per year in my topic. I do also a lot of lecture and PhD student, but what that means is that those 8 students, they go to the lecture, but also they do tutorials with me. That means that we do micro sort of seminars of me plus 3 students every week. And every week they write an essay of 2,000 words and they send it to me and I send them feedback. This is unique in the sense that the quantity of feedback, comments, suggestion that are also tailored to the interests of the students at Oxford, Cambridge are unique. You will not get anything like this in any other sort of university. And then there is the college life. That is, of course, interesting. The quality of infrastructure, each college has a library. Intellectual environment, which is interesting because if you work, study at Oxford or Cambridge, you also interact a lot with students in other degrees. What does it mean? It means that you can live nearby and eat in the at the Mensa with students doing biology and business and political science. And professor teach to be a student, in the sense that I'm a full professor, and my role is also teaching to BA students. In some institutions, this is delegated to a teaching assistant or non-permanent staff member, whereas Oxford really cares about the teaching, Cambridge as well, and professors teach directly to BA students. And I would say I will stop here. Of course, then we can go back to why Oxford, what is strange about Oxford, you know, how people dress up. That is the room where I have lunch or dinner, or I used to have before COVID. And of course, these are questions, and then we can try to elaborate or discuss. But I think I will stop here and take any questions or comments, and feel free to ask in English or Italian.